each other with our hearts. We're on holy ground. If life is a journey between birth and death, then every step we take matters with every breath. And each path we follow leads us somewhere or to someone to walk beside. We're on holy ground, right where we are. We're on holy ground, under these shining stars. We're on holy ground. When we reach for each other with our hearts, we're on holy ground. If we are all pilgrims between here and there, then everyone we meet matters each day we share. And no one's a stranger, just a brother or a sister we didn't know. We're on holy ground, right where we are. We're on holy ground, under these shining stars. We're on holy ground. When we reach for each other with our hearts, we're on holy ground. If there is a heaven beyond earth and sky, it's made of moments here that matter with you and I. There's no destination more full of grace than this place we meet again. We're on holy ground, right where we are. We're on holy ground, under these shining stars. We're on holy ground. When we reach for each other with our hearts, we're on holy ground, right where we are. We're on holy ground, under these shining stars. We're on holy ground. When we reach for each other with our hearts, we're on holy ground.
Good afternoon, and welcome to Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church Online to this service of remembrance and celebration. I'm the Reverend Abhijan Amanchi, one of the ministers serving this religious community, and I welcome you to this service of remembrance and hope as we come together in this space made sacred by our presence and our memories, connecting across time and space and from coast to coast. Feel free to share your name and where you're joining us from today. We're gathered here this afternoon because the curtain of death has fallen between us and one we love, Phyllis Richter. When someone we love dies, especially in this case after a long and fulfilling life, family and friends gather with sorrow and with gratitude in their hearts. We come in sorrow, confronting the fact that life ends. This is the condition of our birth, that at the end of the road, near or far, stands always our death. All the generations have had to bear this heavy truth, but all our knowing doesn't make it any easier. The final farewells always come as a loss for which we somehow feel ourselves unprepared. But we also gather with gratitude. Gratitude for having known Phyllis, for being touched by her love, her warmth, her friendship, her intellect, her humor, her zest for life, and for the privilege of having been on life's journey with her. How true are the words of the poet Khalil Gibran: when you're sorrowful, look again in your heart, and you shall see that in truth you are weeping for that which has been your delight. So while death has brought us together, life has gathered us too. Life channeled through Phyllis's life. And love, life's greatest expression, which survives even death, has gathered us to remember Phyllis, to mourn her passing, to celebrate her living, and to express gratitude and thanksgiving for the many ways in which she touched and transformed our lives. We can never hope to speak to all aspects and achievements of Phyllis's life this afternoon, but what we share will deepen and enrich our understanding of her as a person. And in doing so, we celebrate the life that she lived, the loves that she cherished, the beauty that she created, and the values that she embodied. In this way, we hope to inspire each one of us to do the same. Our best gift to one another today, and our best tribute to Phyllis both now and in the future, is to hold her in our hearts and in our memories as completely as possible. And through our memories, our stories, and love, to give her back to one another again and again. So let us invoke the spirit of life and love, in which we live, move, breathe, and have our being, to be with us in this hour, as we give thanks for all that is the life of Phyllis Ekman Richter. As is the custom of our faith tradition, we open this sacred time with the lighting of the chalice. Today, this is the flame of memory and hope that we carry within us as we honor Phyllis. We acknowledge that a human life is sacred in its beginning and at its end. So as Mary and Christina kindle the memorial flame, I invite us to speak the chalice lighting words that are on screen.
My name is Mary Ramirez de Arellano. I am the youngest daughter of Phyllis Richter, and this is my daughter, Christina Ramirez de Arellano.
We light this chalice in loving memory of our beloved mother and grandmother, Phyllis Richter, and in tribute to the love a single life can inspire. May the chalice remind us of the extravagant gift of life. May it signify the community we create in our being together and our sharing together.
Hello, I'm Ellen, Phyllis's granddaughter. From George Bernard Shaw. This is the true joy in life, the being used for a purpose recognized by yourself as a mighty one. the being a force of nature instead of a feverish, selfish little clod of ailments and grievances, complaining that the world will not devote itself to making you happy. I'm of the opinion that my life belongs to the whole community, and as long as I live, it is my privilege to do for it whatever I can. I want to be thoroughly used up when I die. For the harder I work, the more I live. I rejoice in life for its own sake. Life is no brief candle to me. It is a sort of splendid torch, which I have got hold of for the moment, and I want to make it burn as brightly as possible before handing it on to future generations.
Hi, I'm Nicholas Richter, and I'm Phyllis's grandson. I will be reading My Memorial by J. Frederick Osterlin. I am eternal, for I am a part of the universe. I know not from whence I came, nor where I go, but this I know. Within me there is a spark of eternity. When I go, it will be without regret, except for the loved ones I leave behind. Yet through each of you I shall live on. Your ears shall hear the music of the wind, the song of the birds, the laughter of the people. Your eyes shall see the beauty of the spring with its unfailing promise of resurrection and life. The smell of the flowers, the beauty of the hills, and the wonders of the universe shall not escape you. I will be there. Life has been good to me, far beyond my expectations. I have loved and been loved. Therefore, weep not that I go, for I am a part of you and you are a part of me, and we are eternal part of the creation in all its mystery, majesty, and glory.
The details of a person's life story can never encompass the meanings of that life, but the details are a place to begin. Phyllis Ekman Richter was born on April 16th, 1921 in Duluth, Minnesota, into a Swedish-American family with deep roots in Minnesota and Wisconsin. She was the youngest daughter of John C. and Grace Y. Ekman. She had two older sisters, Betty, who died at the age of 8, and Rosemary. Their mother, Grace, was trained as a school teacher, but spent most of her life as a homemaker. Their father, John, owned a small cigar store in Duluth. He wore a three-piece suit and a bow tie to work every day. From an early age, Phyllis was an avid reader, and growing up in the Depression, embraced the progressive politics of the day. After graduating from high school in 1939, Phyllis attended the College of St. Scholastica in Duluth for her undergraduate degree, and then went on to receive a graduate degree in social work from the University of Minnesota. Phyllis met Al Richter in graduate school during his military service. They got married on August 7, 1945 in Seattle, the day after the US bombed Hiroshima, a scary time to be starting a family. The couple moved to Minneapolis in 1952. Their oldest daughter, Lisa, was born in 1948, Paul in 1950, and Mary in 1952. Phyllis and Al moved with their 3 children in 1962 to the DC area. They became members of Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church the same year. After the children grew older, Phyllis started working for a series of social service agencies in Maryland. In the 1970s, she opened a private counseling center and served, along with her minister, the Reverend Ken McLean, on the Intramural Review Board, the IRB, to the National Institute of Mental Health. She also served as an assistant professor at Catholic University from 1969 to 1978. Phyllis was predeceased by her husband Al in 1996. She moved to Maplewood Park Senior Community in 2001, where she lived for 19 years. Phyllis died peacefully on July 31st, 2020. She was 99.
Hello, I'm Paul Richter, Phyllis's son. My mother was often blessed with good fortune. She grew up in a Swedish-American family in the west end of Duluth, Minnesota, a bustling neighborhood of working-class immigrants during the Depression. But her father owned a small cigar store, and the family didn't feel the strains that many families did at the time. Her birth in 1921 was a joy and a relief to her family, which had lost its first daughter 3 years earlier to diabetes. Mom's sister Rosemary, 5 years her senior, was thrilled to have a cute younger sister in a Dutch bob haircut. She showed Phyllis off to her friends, treating her like a sort of trophy sister. Phyllis went through some of the ordeals that kids often face. One was Miss Baccalier, a 6th grade teacher who terrorized her class with angry eruptions and whacks with a ruler. She struck such fear into Phyllis that Phyllis developed a nervous habit of chewing on her hand. But by the end of the term, Phyllis had found a way to deal with the teacher. Miss Baccalier told Phyllis's mother that she'd been glad to have her in her class. Phyllis had found a way through adversity, as she often did during her life. She came from a family of strong women. In a book of memoirs that she wrote in her final years, she revealed that her sister, her mother, and her grandmother all had a bossy streak, and Phyllis was outspoken too. One of Mom's friends from Maplewood, her retirement community, told me that when Phyllis first began sitting in on the residents' meetings, the others expected that this polite newcomer was going to be demure. But within a few minutes, they discovered that Phyllis would often share what was on her mind. As a teenager, Phyllis discovered she was a social creature. She was talkative, vivacious, and made friends easily. At one party, a classmate gave her a name tag that identified her as Ebullient Eckie, a play on her last name, Ekman. Phyllis was drawn to a career in social work. The work seemed to be in keeping with the reforms of Franklin Roosevelt, who she, like her father, admired greatly. After college, she landed a scholarship that paid for a 2-year graduate program in social work at the University of Minnesota. Her graduate school years were one of the happiest periods of her life. She lived in a boarding house with 15 other graduate students who she found smart, and interesting, and who came from places like New York that were not at all like Duluth. She felt a whole new world had opened up to her. On a blind date, she met my father, Al Richter, who was then a graduate student in public administration and headed for the Army. Al, a reserved guy, was serious about Phyllis. When he learned that there was another suitor in the picture, he decided he needed to move fast. He bombarded her with passionate letters. They were married in August 1945 in Spokane, Washington, where Dad was based. They had so much fun at their wedding that the clergyman, a starchy Lutheran pastor, felt he had to remind them that marriage was a serious business. Raising a family brought new challenges. They moved to 4 different cities in quick succession and often found it tough to locate comfortable housing. When Mom was pregnant with her first child, Lisa, they lived in a sweltering attic apartment in St. Louis that had mice, bugs, and summer temperatures that were still at 100 at midnight. Phyllis regretted having to put aside her social work while she raised her 3 children. But in Minneapolis, where the family lived between 1952 and 1962, Phyllis also threw herself into other activities, such as the League of Women Voters, a book club that studied the world's great literature, and a group that advocated enlightened world government. She exposed her kids to all her passions: reading, classical music, democratic politics, and healthy outdoor exercise. The family took long driving vacations through the West and to remote Minnesota campgrounds. Phyllis was willing to put up with the discomforts of camping so long as Al was willing to get up first in the morning to gather firewood and make the coffee that she needed to get going. In 1962, the family moved to suburban Maryland so Al could take a job with the federal government. Phyllis decided then the kids were old enough that she could resume work part-time at a series of social agencies in Maryland. In 1969, she took on a more challenging job, teaching and overseeing the field work of graduate students at Catholic University. She was flattered to get this offer, but after years of only working part-time, she worried that she might not be ready for the assignment. And her anxieties proved justified. She felt in her first years buffeted between young students who resisted authority and the school's management who wanted her to exert more of it. Looking back on it, she wrote in her memoir, "I can only think of that cliche about fools rushing in." But she stuck to the job for a decade and got better at it. The early 70s were stressful for other reasons. Al developed prostate cancer, which required harsh treatment and for a time seemed life-threatening. Phyllis struggled too in her relationship with her younger daughter, Mary, who had decided after high school to move to rural Northern California then, rather than immediately go to college. It was a time of her life, Phyllis wrote in her memoirs, when she felt most buffeted by emotion. The 1970s gave way, though, to a more peaceful 1980s, when these past problems seemed to recede and her children started their own families. Phyllis took on a new and more enjoyable role as mater familias, holding the extended family together with Sunday dinners and holiday gatherings at her home in Kensington. For her adult family members, Kingston Road was a place where you could go to enjoy a friendly crowd and Al's martinis. For the grandchildren, it was a romper room where they could tumble with toys. Al's cancer returned and ended his life in February 1996. Al had been Phyllis's problem solver for half a century, fixing plumbing, raking the yard, and minding the finances so that she didn't have to. His absence was intimidating. But Phyllis took it all on and sold the house, shed possessions, and moved to the senior residence in Bethesda without relying on her children. The move was an adjustment. At mealtime, she had to ask strangers if she could sit at their table. But she found the others welcoming and lost no time building a new set of friends. She found a boyfriend, Dr. Bill Jordan, a world-famous epidemiologist. Phyllis lived in Maplewood for 19 years, far longer than she expected. At the end, her eyesight and hearing were almost gone, but she maintained a bond with her hard-working caregivers, and she entertained them. They would tell each other stories of the funny and unexpected things, Phyllis said. Even when she could barely communicate at the end, she wanted the staff to roll her wheelchair out each day so she could sit with the other residents during activity sessions. She wanted to be with the crowd. At 99, there was still a trace of ebullient ecce.
Hello, I'm Ginger DeLuca.
And I'm Frank DeLuca, also known as Joey to Phyllis.
And we met Phyllis in October of 1987 when we brought Karen's grandmother, Jenny Tumulty, to the Richter Tumulty wedding. She was one of the matrons of honor, along with Karen's other grandmother, Emily Plow.
We started having Thanksgiving dinners with the Richter Tumulties in 1995, and at that time Phyllis was joining us for the Thanksgiving feast.
We were living in Vienna at the time, and the Tumulty Richters always brought her over with, of course, their two young boys who are now grown men. Phyllis always brought the pies from Balducci's, which was a store very close to her. They were absolutely delicious pies. That was usually a pumpkin, an apple, and maybe a pecan pie.
To pay us back for inviting her to Thanksgiving dinner, Phyllis would invite us in the springtime to the Cosmos Club down in D.C.,
which we loved. It was such a wonderful thing. Sometimes she invited other relatives, but it was usually us and the Tumulty Richters. She was such a delight to have at our house and to spend time with. She was funny, she was knowledgeable, quiet, opinionated, and just an absolute delight to have. She has not been at our house for the last 3 or 4 years because she just hasn't been able to do it because of her health. And we sure have missed her. And we've missed her pies as well. But anyway, we just loved Phyllis. What a great lady.
We wanted to take this time to pay our respects for her, and we will miss her dearly.
Hi, I'm Phyllis's oldest child, Lisa. I want to thank my mom for always introducing me to the world with all its perspectives, her many friends and acquaintances from different races, nationalities, and personal histories. I remember Mom sharing our home with Japanese and Filipino foreign student boarders when I was very young, inviting vegetarians from India to our Thanksgiving dinner, and introducing me to her African-American grad school colleague when I was 5. Mom emphasized to me the importance of a college education for women so I would still have contributions to make and new experiences to learn from in my 70s, where I'm at now, and beyond. Phyllis was a strong role model of an assertive, get-it-done personality for me, my daughters, and now my granddaughters and grandson. My family and my community benefit from her life and her gifts.
Hi, I'm Vanessa. I'm Phyllis's granddaughter. One of my fondest memories of Grandma was spending time during the summers when I was a kid. We would do a bunch of things. We'd go swimming at the pool. We'd go to the library and look at books. And then we would have happy hours in Grandma's cushy little office space, and my sister and I would watch PBS, and we would eat goldfish and drink our 7-Ups while Grandma was on the porch drinking her happy hour. And then also one of my favorite things was in the basement, there was a very dark room, and it was this room full of all these toys. And one of my favorite things to do was to play with this creepy dollhouse that just was so lifelike, and I'd never seen anything like it, but I could sit there for hours and just play with the dolls. So thank you for all of the great memories, Grandma.
Hi, my name is Promise Alstrom. I have known Phyllis for many years. Her daughter Lisa even lived with us for a while in New Haven. Phyllis and my dad, Sidney Alstrom, were cousins, close cousins, Ekman cousins, only a few years apart. They shared many a holiday and summer vacation outside of Cokato, Minnesota. I reconnected with Phyllis when I moved to Washington, D.C. myself. Phyllis and her family welcomed me right in. We had many a lunch together at Maplewood. Our topics covered everything, but 2 topics in particular cemented our bond. The first was the love of her family, her children, her grandchildren, and then her great-grandchildren. She was very proud and appreciative of their love and attention. The second bond was over my dad. Shortly before I had moved to Washington, D.C., he had died at a young age. I missed him terribly. Phyllis's stories of him, their times together on the farms and houses in and around Cokato, helped me greatly. One last happy memory of Phyllis is at her 90th birthday at the Cosmos Club, a rare extravagance for her. She looked so radiant in her beautiful silk suit, surrounded by her mini family. I will miss Phyllis. I thank her for her stories, her openness with me. I will miss her. Thank you, Phyllis, and goodbye.
Greetings. My name is Ann Fitzpatrick Call, and I was Phyllis's niece. In my life, I had one uncle and one aunt, Phyllis and Al Richter. So when I thought about family, I thought about my parents and my brother Rory and my aunt and uncle and my cousins Lisa, Paul, and Mary. Their visits to California and our visits to Minneapolis and then Washington, D.C. were events that I looked forward to every year. When they came to Los Angeles, that meant a trip to Disneyland and the beach and maybe a day jaunt up to Santa Barbara, where I live now. Trips back east meant long train rides across the country and then hot, sultry summer nights playing badminton or catching fireflies down by Rock Creek. Visiting national monuments and museums by day and watching the nightly adult cocktail hour with admiration and a little envy. It truly always felt like visiting another country, a very green, more exotic place than brown, dry California in the summer. Phyllis was a younger, pixie-haired, darker version of my mother, who had a twinkle in her eye and so many of the same opinions and sensibilities of my mother. Raised in Duluth by a no-nonsense mother and a socialist-leading father, they had both left the nest but kept their Swedish Minnesotan practical and cerebral sides. Eat healthy, do all things in moderation, appreciate art, watch a lot of British TV, always have a good book going, and most importantly, always vote Democratic. We spent one vacation in the late 60s arguing over the merits of Humphrey versus Robert Kennedy versus Eugene McCarthy. That year didn't end well for any of those candidates. In 1978, when I was 25, I left California and with my husband Hollis moved to Washington, D.C., for him to pursue grad school, for me to get my first real job, and most importantly, to finally partake in the Richter cocktail hour on the screen porch on Kingston Road. Phyllis was literally my best and only friend for the first few years, and we looked forward to our Sunday dinners in Kensington, followed by a ripping Masterpiece Theater installment. Our first son, Andrew, was born at Sibley Hospital in D.C., and Phyllis was my first visitor. She and Al were wonderful to Andrew, and we all spent our first 2 Christmases with the Richters until the siren song of temperate winters and dry summers drew us back to California. Over the years, I saw Phyllis and Al frequently. We all spent a wonderful family reunion in Lake Tahoe, where Al and Paul beat us in doubles, and Phyllis marveled at the icy temperatures of the lake. My aunt and I sadly also watched my mother slipping away into dementia, and it was reassuring to still have that link to the Ekman sisters for so many years after my mother passed away. Now, sadly, all of that generation is gone, and my brother also gone, unfortunately. I take great pride and comfort in the good life that they made for their families and their communities. And so goodbye to my smart, progressive, funny, book and art-loving and empathetic social worker aunt. Phyllis and my mom helped me form me into the person I am today. Lucky me to have had them in my life. Cheers.
A remembrance speech barely begins to properly convey the many virtuous traits that my mother, Phyllis Ekman, exemplified throughout her lifetime. During my youth and adulthood, my mom worked to instill these very qualities in me, believing, I'm sure, that they would help me become a better person and to appreciate the good in others around me. My mom taught me the importance of finding the positive in every person I met. I remember vividly when she told me once, "There is in everyone always something to like." I'm sure that her long career as a social worker had influenced this optimistic mindset in some way. My mother was a progressive for her time. This was evident not only from her own political beliefs, but also in her actions. During the 1950s, we hosted 2 Japanese exchange students. This was at a time post-World War II when the Japanese were still vilified. I was always grateful that my mother was open to other people and where they came from. Her cast of mind introduced me to a world beyond my own immediate everyday life and helped foster in me an interest in culture, art, and history. It is no accident that I married a Spaniard. Along with hosting foreign exchange students, my mother would take us, when we were children, to museums to expose us to other cultures around the world and to the love of knowledge. Mom loved geography and traveling. She traveled well into her 80s to most of the 50 states, as well as to more exotic places like Istanbul, Turkey. Mom loved to read. She read voraciously throughout her life. It is in part to her that I attribute my own love of reading. My mother also cherished and promoted the arts. She enrolled all 3 of us children in art and piano lessons. She would encourage me to practice my sheet music, gracing me with compliments as I would repeat the same melodies week after week, month after month. Mom also valued physical health and nutrition. She walked and swam most of her life, and she encouraged me to pursue gymnastics and dance. She instilled in all of us a healthy lifestyle. She cooked nutritious meals and was always mindful of the food pyramid. We occasionally ate out at fancy restaurants, but we never ate out at fast food joints. There was rarely soda in our house, with the exception of ginger ale. Along with her intellectual pursuit and physical wellness, my mother also preached the importance of mental health. Shaking her head with a sober expression, she would occasionally reaffirm to me, "Many people don't believe this, but mental health is a real thing." Mom was a therapist and promoted its benefits. Our mother was a good listener and used this skill as a mother and in her various careers. She would converse endlessly with anyone and saw the value in investing in family and community. She wrote letters, cards, and holiday greetings over many years to friends and extended family members. She was a prominent member of the Unitarian Church and introduced us to spirituality by insisting that while living under her roof, we come to Sunday service at Cedar Lane. Mom, you left us a rich legacy. Your ardent spirit has been the light to guide me through bouts of despair and darkness. Your passion for life has always glowed to make brighter times of cheer. Your flame is far from extinguished. Each and every day I see your presence still within me, in my siblings, your grandchildren, and your grandchildren, great-grandchildren. Thank you for all you taught me, and thank you for the positive influence that you had on all of us who were so fortunate to meet you in your lifetime. I will always miss you and love you, Mom.
Good day. When I met Phyllis Richter in the early 1990s, she had been a stalwart member of Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church for perhaps 30 years. My wife Kate and I were in the early stages of our relationship with this religious community. We were on the periphery, just trying to figure out how to find our way, how to connect, how to make meaning out of the many ways and the many paths available for deepening one's spiritual engagement with the world and the many avenues for getting to know people at Cedar Lane. Early on, Kate found the choir, and subsequently I found the adult program committee. As I recall, I met Phyllis on a Saturday morning at a class on storytelling that was being conducted by Sandra Harris, the wife of interim minister Ed Harris. It was being held downstairs in the parsonage, what we now know as the Chalice house. I checked the chronology. This was after Reverend Kenneth McLean retired as Cedar Lane's senior minister and before the congregation called Roger Fritz to succeed him. There were perhaps a dozen students in the class. The atmosphere was relaxed, the participants were cordial, the teacher was engaging. The content was more than sufficient to convey to us students that storytelling could be both fun and challenging. I remember at least 3 things about the occasion. Of course, I remember meeting Phyllis. If memory serves, she introduced Ms. Harris with a twinkle in her eye and a smile on her face. There was a warmth about Phyllis that was welcoming and a comfort in her demeanor that was encouraging to us students. As the program concluded, she asked us to complete a brief evaluation form. She chatted with the participants. I distinctly remember turning in my form and talking with Phyllis. She asked me if I liked the class. She asked me what I got out of the class. She asked me why I signed up. She asked me if I had any suggestions for follow-up programs. She mentioned her role on the Adult Programs Committee, the group that made the courses happen. She asked me if I was interested in sitting in on a meeting of the committee. And I said yes, to see how the curriculum was created. Subsequently, I attended a meeting, and wouldn't you know it, I joined the committee. I served for 6 years, or 2-year, 3-year terms. I got to serve with Phyllis, who completed her 2 3-year terms early in my tenure, including a year as chair. You know, in retrospect, it seems a simple thing. Taking a class, learning some new subject matter, meeting new people, making a connection or two, watching the gracious Phyllis Richter be herself, sharing her personality and passion, watching her share the magic of herself to foster community. Something clicked that morning I met Phyllis Richter. A door opened, the light shone brightly, and joining the Adult Program Committee was a seminal experience. Serving on the APC marked the beginning of a lifelong relationship for me, a lifelong relationship of service at Cedar Lane. Friendships formed on that committee have endured to this day. I owe it all to Phyllis Richter.
Thank you, Jasmine, for that beautiful piece of music. The 20th century American philosopher George Santayana wrote, and I adapted these words for context: to see things under the form of eternity is to see them in their historic and moral truth, not as they seemed when they passed, but as they remain when they are over. When a person's life is over, it remains true that she has lived. It remains true that she has been one sort of person and not another. In the infinite mosaic of history, that bit has its unfading color and its perpetual function and effect. A person who understands herself under the form of eternity knows the quality that eternally belongs to her, and knows that she cannot wholly die, even if she would. For when the movement of her life is over, the truth of her life remains. The fact of her is a part forever of the infinite context of facts. So, what is the truth of Phyllis's life that remains? I've considered what might possibly call the several truths of her life. There is the truth of her coming from a family of strong women and being herself a strong woman, as in Marge Piercy's poem For Strong Women. And I quote, "A strong woman is strong in words, in action, in connection, in feeling. She's not strong as a stone, but as a wolf suckling her young. Strength is not in her, but she enacts it as the wind fills a sail." There's the truth of her welcoming and hospitable spirit. She was a good listener who made people feel welcomed and at home. Then there's the truth of her career as a social worker. During her career, she worked with single mothers in need and later with couples and families with children and especially with youth. There's the truth of her sense of humor that came with a twinkle in her eye. There's the truth of her theological evolution and spiritual depth. Phyllis had been raised Lutheran by her mother, Grace. Phyllis and Al attended the Congregational Church while they lived in Minneapolis and then joined Cedar Lane when they moved to Maryland as they felt more at home in a liberal religious setting. There's the truth of her love for this faith, Unitarian Universalism, and her church. She loved Cedar Lane for its liberal religious views, social activism, and the sense of community that she and her family found. I think Phyllis believed in original blessing, not original sin. As her daughter Lisa pointed out in her reflection, she believed that there was some good to be found in everyone, an affirmation of the first Unitarian Universalist principle, the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Phyllis believed that the divine is manifest in, among, and through creation. She maintained a healthy and holy curiosity throughout her life. She was a lifelong seeker who was not satisfied with superficial answers, but sought to plumb the depths of life's mysteries in search of answers, and yet was comfortable living in the questions. Then there's the truth of her passion for progressive causes and social action and democratic politics. She was a longtime member of the League of Women Voters, an affirmation of the second UU principle, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. There are other truths as well. She cherished and promoted the arts. She was an avid reader, a swimmer, hiker, world traveler, a believer and practitioner in a healthy lifestyle, who never set foot in any fast food place, maybe McDonald's, once in her life, according to Karen, and a lover of classical music and BBC dramatizations. But my last word today must be about her love for her family. I've always liked the image that the French author Antoine de Saint-Exupéry used when he said that for a mother, death is only half a death. Each life in turn bursts like a pod and sends forth its seed. When a mother dies, for a second time, the umbilical cord is cut. For a second time, the knot is loosened, the knot that bound one generation to another. Phyllis's deep love for Al and her children and her grandchildren and her great-grandchildren and her niece is a knot that death has loosened. But it can never be untied and never be cut. To Phyllis's family, I say, you are all woven together into the fabric of your family's life. And that is a fabric that you can wrap yourself in and feel Phyllis close to you for every day you have going forward. So friends, we're grateful knew her and loved her and were loved by her. We will keep her memory alive in our hearts and in our minds. And though we shall miss her many gifts and many truths, the savor she brought to us will always stay with us. We are so much more for her having lived. We thank you, Phyllis, for your years with us in this world and for allowing us to know you as a real person. We thank you for being the blessing that you were. May you be inscribed forever in the book of life. Would you join me now in the spirit of prayer, reflection, and meditation? Nameless one of many names, whom some call God and others do not name at all, fall afresh on us today as we celebrate the life and mourn the loss of our dear departed friend and family member and ancestor, Phyllis Richter. We pray as mourners of death and celebrants of life. We pray comfort for the hearts of those of us who knew and loved Phyllis, knowing that the fire of her memory will inspire us to do good and just work in the world. Sweet mystery, we pray hope that we will always seek new and creative ways to honor the legacies of confidence, intelligence, tenacity, faithfulness, compassion, generosity, and love left on this plane by our blessed ancestor Phyllis. In community, we pray gratitude for the long and precious life of Phyllis Ekman Richter, daughter, sister, wife, mother, grandmother, great-grandmother, aunt, social worker, co-religionist, and friend. In gratitude, we celebrate our memories of Phyllis, memories of a life well lived. May these, our memories, ease the pain of loss and bring us joy, laughter, and assurance that death reminds us of the goodness of life and the sweetness of our love for each other. Amazing grace. Now turn our eyes and hearts again to the world of the living, to the needs of those we love, to the work we have to do, and to a strong faith for the remainder of our years. Help us fashion a tapestry of praise to the goodness of life, that our love for Phyllis may be witnessed, renewed, and strengthened in our love for others and for life itself. In the name of all that is holy, life-affirming, life-sustaining, we say, Amen. Let us now join our hearts and our voices together to sing Amazing Grace. Our benediction today is a poem from the Indian poet Rabindranath Tagore that was shared at Al's memorial service. This song of mine will wind its music around you, my child, like the fond arms of love. This song of mine will touch your forehead like a kiss of blessing. When you are alone, it will sit by your side and whisper in your ear. When you're in the crowd, it will fence you about with aloofness. My song will be like a pair of wings for your eyes. It will transport your heart to the verge of the unknown. And when my voice is silent in death, my song will speak in your heart. Phyllis's song speaks in our hearts. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today for this service of remembrance and celebration. We invite you to stay on for a little while longer for the postlude while the slides play once again, and to also share more memories of Phyllis in the chat. So I say to you, go in peace, friends. Go making peace, living gently, loving mightily, and bowing to the deep and abiding mystery of which we are a part. So may it be.
you.